Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as I will not address you as that by name, because frankly, I think we all have time to move. When I just heard the previous speaker saying that the Canadians feel that they are in some way indebted because of the Dutch, I think it's quite the other way around. So that the Dutch are very much indebted because of what you have done in the Netherlands. This is the 44, 45, actually during the entire war. And the gratitude of the Dutch is so pronounced that in fact that 5 years ago when we had the 60th anniversary, and most of us thought that will probably be the last celebration for a number of reasons, that there was this groundswell that took place over the past 5 years, that we need to do it again at the 65th anniversary. It caught us a little bit off guard, but we're so delighted to do that actually. A personal story. When in 1950, an aunt of mine and a sister of my father dragged my brother and I to Groesbeek, and I wonder if I can see some hands up who knows what Groesbeek is. Anybody's heard of Groesbeek near Nijmegen? It's one of the largest Canadian cemeteries, and frankly, my brother and I, we had never heard of it. So she walked us from Nijmegen to Groesbeek to the cemetery, and we went amidst the crosses and the stones, and she pulled out 2 toothbrushes. And we looked at the toothbrushes and said, "What's that?" She said, "You boys, you need to start cleaning these tombstones, because under every particular marker or tombstone, there is a hero buried." And I remember asking my aunt, my tante Bertha, of course, her name, "What do you mean by a hero?" She said, "Under every tombstone, there is a Canadian hero. And it is our task into perpetuity to make sure that they get the honor and the glory for having sacrificed their lives for us, for our liberation." And to me, that was an unknown thing. But from then on in, I knew exactly what the word Canadian meant. I knew exactly what the Canadian hero meant. I knew exactly what you have done, or at least close to it, to liberate the Netherlands. Because Holland was kapot, and everybody understands the word kapot. It needed to be rebuilt. That we had a terrible time in Holland. There's a lot of starvation, a lot of oppression, there's a lot of destruction, and so on. And it is thanks to the Allied forces, because I don't want to forget the Polish as well. There's a thanks to the Allied forces that we were liberated in 1945. For that, that we will be thankful until the day we die, including those little grandchildren that some of you are going to meet in Holland, who is still doing the cemeteries that in Groesbeek and Bergen-op-Zoom and the other 3 places where we have cemeteries. I wish you well. I thank you for this invitation. We'd like to invite you for May 15th. There's a Victoria Park at the Dutch Club. If you haven't signed up yet and wish to come, you know where my office is. We'd love to see you and hand out flowers to you while you do the parade through Victoria Park. Thank you and have a good day.
There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace.
Good afternoon. I was just going to say a few words about the history of the Navy. It basically is 100 years old. Was Parliament created a situation where we had a Navy and a Naval Reserve and a Naval College, and that stuff was all set up before 1910, 1911. The Navy was thin until the First World War started. And it seemed as soon as the war started, expansion began. At the end of World War I, there was 300 Navy ships and 3,600 sailors. And again, when the war ended, the Navy sort of shrunk and went back down to a normal size that would protect the coast. During World War II, the same thing happened. The war started. Obviously, there was a lot of problems going on in the Atlantic, and the Canadian Navy grew to the size of almost 100,000 men, 7,000 women, and 14,000 merchant navy. And by the time the war was over, Canada had the third largest navy in the world. A massive building program saw corvettes, frigates, and other escort vessels. Also, ships were donated from Britain and Canada, or sorry, Britain and the United States. But Canada was the one that put the sailors together and the crews together to go out and man these vessels. By 1968, the forces had decided that they were going to combine and that the Navy would no longer be its own entity. It then became the Canadian Forces Maritime Command. But I found something from a researcher that I will share with you before I'm finished. He was a naval historian, and his parents both served in the Navy. And this is something that he had written. It says, "I grew up in a Navy family. My father was a regular force officer who had risen from the lower deck. He was a son of a petty officer and had come to Canada to deliver one of the boats to the first Canadian Navy. He decided to stay and elected to help the Navy grow up and imbue the traditions of service that prided itself with the Navy to his family. I recall vividly the day the armed forces paraded in Ottawa to witness the lowering of the old service ensigns and the raising of the new. My mother was a naval vet, a former Wren, and at this transformative moment of national symbolism, she wept with the lowering of the white ensign. Something disappeared from her history. Later in life, my father came home demoralized in his new Army-style uniform with an Army rank. Like many other naval officers, he retired soon after, not wanting to leave the legacy of the Navy behind. Throughout 3 wars and many peacekeeping missions, Canada's Navy has been exemplary in doing their duty and has a legacy of service that should make every Canadian feel proud to this day. Thank you.